welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to work on showing you how I enlarged the pattern for the tie front shirt. It's a free pattern from Danny Chu, and I enlarged it to fit the Pear body. So the first thing I did is I took the pattern and I enlarged it on my printer. Actually, I used the program to enlarge it by 5%. At first I enlarged it 20%, but that was too big. So I enlarged it 5%, and the problem with enlarging the patterns is that they kind of get distorted because they become larger in length, but also in width, and the torso is the same size as the other body, like in length. So that's why I enlarged it only 5%, just to get the basic shape. So by enlarging it 5%, it looks like it fits perfectly across the back and also around the neck. The armhole is pretty spot on. And by the way, I enlarged all the pieces, even the sleeve and the collar. And then I sewed it together partially and to fit it on this style. So what I have to do to make it fit a little bit better is first to the back part, I'm going to enlarge it a little bit more, and by fitting this, I'm going to shorten it also, because I think it's too long, if you see in the front. And also it doesn't go around her entire waist because her waist is bigger. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the seams, the side seams, so I can pin it to the proper size. And another thing I did is I marked where the shoulder goes. So I'm going to take it apart on the side seams. I used a long stitch so that it's easy to pull apart. And I'm also going to use my sloper to help me with the fitting. So I also basted along the neckline, like a stay stitching, and this helps not to distort the fabric. So my back was pretty spot on, except for I have to increase the sides. So on my sloper, and this sloper is without any seam allowances. I'm going to leave the shape of the armhole the same way that it is on the actual pattern because it fits her okay. So what I'll do is more or less fit this, and I'm going to add this much plus the seam allowance to the side seams. So I'll go ahead and recut this piece after I take it off and add to the sides. And I'm also going to do the same thing for the front side. Whatever I add to the back side, I'm going to add to the front side as well. To this here, just make it, instead of going straight down, I'm going to make it go out a little bit. So about that much plus the seam allowance. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll try it on the doll. So here's the back. I cut it exactly like the enlarged piece, plus I added a piece of a piece to the side. And for the front, instead of taking this off, because there's nothing wrong with this seam here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a piece right on the side. I'm going to sew right on top of here and do it on both sides, and then we can do our fitting. So I attached the enlarged back side on the side seams, and I attached the little 2 pieces of fabric on the side seams in the front, trying to make them even. Like I meshed them in the front and then made my 2 sides even, so it's easier to fit. So now we're going to try it again on the doll. And I'm going to put it inside out. So we're gonna fit it just the way we would fit a slooper, because basically this is what it is. It also helps to mark the center. I have a crease here on the center, so I can see more or less where it falls. And I'm going to be shortening this, so let me just shorten it from the get-go. You can tape it to the side temporarily. And put it over the front. And see, this seam doesn't change. We want to keep that shape. And now, just by enlarging the back, it was pretty helpful. And we can make little snips on the armhole curve. So I can go around. And I didn't need to add those 2 pieces of fabric on the front, so I'm going to just go ahead and take them off. Now I'm going to mark my side seam. So I pinned the sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit to the front. And here on the front, it's going to take up a little bit of seam allowance here. And because this is 5% longer here, what I'll do is I'll shorten it as well in the front. and I'll shorten it from the bottom to make these a little bit smaller, so that when I put it on the dowel, it falls right underneath the bust line. And I think that's gonna work pretty good. So then I'll mark it. Mark the hem in the back, mark the hem in the front. And then I will transfer the changes that I made onto the paper pattern. So that's looking pretty good. So now I marked the side where the seam would be, and here I'm just gonna cut it, the front, just add a seam allowance to it. And I printed up the enlarged pattern pieces. So I'm gonna mark also the blouse. Or I fold it. Now we're gonna take these pieces and mark the paper pattern piece. I'm going to use a tracing wheel just to trace where I'm going to do my seam more or less. And then what I'll do is I'll add the seam allowance, and I'm using the same seam allowance as the pattern because this seam allowance is also larger. So I'm going to add that along. And I'm using my, you can't really see it on the camera, but I'm using the line that I traced. And just adding seam allowance to that. And then when I cut it, I'm just gonna put this on the fold and cut it. Otherwise I would need to add to my paper. And then how short I want it, I'm gonna do the same thing. It's gonna change the shape a little bit, but that's okay. Okay, I marked the seam, and now I'm gonna add my seam allowance to the bottom as well. That's going to be my pattern. The armhole is going to be a little bit bigger as well, so we'll have to do the same adjustments on the sleeve. And what we'll do is we'll measure the same amount and add it to the sleeve. So that's going to be here. And I'll just add it, actually I'm going to add it to the back of the sleeve because that's where I'm making that adjustment. And for the front, I'm just adding to where the actual seam line was. And it's going to be tapered. So you can freehand it or use a French curve. Then we want to make sure this side seam is the same length as this side seam, because they have to match. When you're sewing them. So that'll be around here. And then the front, it was about this much shortened. And I know that because I can see the fold lines. We don't want this to be too rounded, so I'm just gonna and then the other change is we're gonna shorten this part as well. So I just kind of measure it with this. And revise it. So then from here, I would add the seam allowance, taking this shape. And the other way we can do it is just to cut. And then I would just add that piece right there and tape it just so that I don't distort the shape of the bottom part here. And that'll be the pattern piece. Okay, so now I put together my revised pattern. And I seam down the front just so I can see how it looks. The armhole is fitting pretty good. The back fits perfect. And actually I think the front too. Yeah, that's gonna look good. This doll has a standard bust. Since it's a tie front, it'll fit okay with the other bust as well. And now, all that I have to do is on my muslin, I'm gonna take the sides apart again and set the sleeves in and the collar so that I can see the fit for the entire thing. It's better to just do one section of fitting at a time rather than putting everything together without testing the fit. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and see how that's working, and I'll adjust my pattern accordingly. I'm going to upload this revised pattern so that you can have it for free. Well, it's a free pattern anyway, but I just want to upload the revised pattern in case you want to make the tie front shirt for your pear shaped smart doll. So what I did for what I added on the pattern on the back, I added equal amounts to each side of the sleeve all along. And this is the finished put together tester. I only did one sleeve because I ran out of fabric. So let's see how that fits. So the sleeve is a good fit, the armhole, and this is, I didn't snip it here, that's why there's a crease there, but it fits really good. And the neck, the collar was spot on because I didn't mess with the neck hole. And then when you put it together with your facings and everything, it's gonna fit perfect. And if you're not happy with the front, you can always add a little bit to the front here. But remember that if you add to the front, you have to adjust the collar length to make sure it fits. So that's it for how I made my tie front shirt for Pear doll. Thank you for watching. Another way of adjusting your sleeve width is to take your original one, cut it in half, just so that I don't have to mess with the side seams. And what I do is I will tape to the adjusted. Just spread it out as much as you need to. Make sure that it's the same amount on each side, top and bottom. So I just measure it like that, and then get a piece of paper and tape it in the back, and just use that as your pattern. So this is called the spread and slash and spread method. I'll just recopy this piece so it's one piece for my pattern. And the rest of the patterns I'll use as is. Because they're all finished.